安，欢迎您莅临台湾校务研究专业协会与国立中央大学共同主办的2017台湾校务研究国际研讨会高教深耕与学习成效第2天的议程。Good morning, welcome to the second day of 2017 International Research International Conference, Richly Cultivating Higher Education while Pursuing Student Success for Taiwan。今天的议程一开始是国际专题演讲的时间，演讲的主题是 Achieving the Mission Utilizing IR to Impact Student Success, Tales from 2 Universities。我们邀请到台湾校务研究专业协会秘书长周怀璞周秘书长担任主持人，邀请到的贵宾是美国内华达大学拉斯维加斯分校决策支持办公室副主任 Dr. Brent M。让我们欢迎主持人周秘书长来为我们介绍今天专题演讲的贵宾。欢迎周秘书长。
各位来宾啊，大家好。这个深耕计划啊，昨天应该送印了啦啊，所以今天大家可以比较轻松一点啊，可以好好 enjoy 我们的conference 啊，我们今天很荣幸啊，请到的是Brent啊，他原来在普渡大学服务，那我们在今年的 AIR 的年会啊，那我们在年会一开始的时候呢，我们有一个AIR 特别帮我们安排的一个 workshop， 那个 workshop 呢就请到的是Dr. Draker。那他就是介绍整个Purdue 的IR 的状况，他们的规模非常之大，然后整个资料库的建制那其中一个也很 impressive 的就是他所有student 的这些 activity 因为他们都用WiFi， 他们的 WiFi 呢不像我们这边电信公司的 WiFi 这些4G 非常的快速可是校园里面通常还有一点比较缓慢。他们那边不一样，他们校园的快速网络那学生都用所以学生都会上网的所有的记录全部都登记起来，然后对于classroom 的这些 activity 啊，平常的哪里的活动啊，全部都有记录，然后做 big data analysis 所以他就介绍了非常 impressive。那所以我们也这样子的机会呢，我们说也请他来跟我们大家来做分享。那今年呢，他move 到了University of Nevada Las Vegas 做data support 这个方面的工作。那我们很荣幸请到他，他也讲说IR 对student 的 success 有什么样的影响介绍给我们。然后他因为在2个学校都服务，这2个学校当然有一些差异，所以他把经验跟我们一起来分享OK。Draker, welcome. Let's give him the applause.
Thank you all. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to be talking about IR mission and how we can use it to support student success. And I'm going to talk about it across the spectrum of both of the campuses I've been at, because they're very, very different. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, how the campuses look different and why I decided to make the move. So that's the focus of the presentation. I want to thank you all very, very much for inviting me here and for the opportunity to speak to you about this. And I sincerely hope you get something out of it. So to begin with, I should talk a little bit about myself and how I came to develop this vision of really what successful IR looks like in terms of working with student success. I've been in institutional research now for approaching almost, well, actually getting close to 18 years at this point. I spent most of that at Purdue University. I was there for almost 17 years, a little over 16 and a half years, worked through various IR roles, eventually becoming the chief data officer there, which Purdue had a kind of a unique structure in that IR reported through our IT organization there. So as chief data officer, I reported to my CIO, and we worked very, very closely with our IT warehousing team. And in fact, by the time I had completed my career there, not only did institutional research and institutional effectiveness report to me, also our IT warehouse team reported to me, all in one organization, and allowed us to do some pretty unique things, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. However, after that time, UNLV approached me, actually about the time I was speaking to TARE at AIR last year. UNLV approached me and wanted to talk about how they could potentially build the kind of infrastructure at UNLV that we've managed to build at Purdue, and wanted to know if I was interested in moving to UNLV and trying to help them create that same kind of environment. It was very intriguing and it was interesting, so I decided to make the move. And there are some things about UNLV that made me very excited about the opportunity to do this. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation. So when I talk about how institutional research can impact student success, I really think around a set of guiding structures. And these are almost hierarchical in their order. And quite frankly, this matters for institutional research in terms of being impactful in anything they do. I think these are very big key steps that IR needs to work towards with it. And the very basic steps with that, and this really matters at UNLV, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, is you've got to start from creating a common set of standards. So before you can even get to higher order research and looking at more interesting questions, you've got to get your campus at a baseline of everybody is talking the same language, everyone defines things the same way, everyone is looking at a common source to answer their questions. And creating that environment allows those people who don't spend every day in the data and getting to know all the nuances, giving them a very easy way to answer common questions, like enrollment, like admissions, like space, things that they need to know to run the university, and you've got to be able to provide it to them in a very quick and easy fashion. And they're also, with that, everybody in higher education tends to be very data savvy and wants to do their own exploration. You have to give them a controlled way to do that. If you let it run willy-nilly, which they have a little too much at UNLV, people will get different answers to the same question. And then the credibility of what you're trying to produce becomes a problem. So you have to give them a way to explore, because they're going to want to do that, but you have to do it in a very structured way so that everyone always rolls up to the same answer, and that you're always able to answer the questions in the exact same way. The next part of that is, once you've established that baseline, this is when you can really start getting into research and doing interesting things that are based around making your institution more effective, including things that impact student success. However, too many IR offices in the United States, when they do research, maybe they publish it on their website, maybe they just talk to the president about it, but they don't make it very broadly accessible to the campus. So it's very important not only that research is done, but that you share it with your campus in a fairly routine and obvious way so that people know where to find it. As a part of that, and really leads right into the next thing, you have to engage the community. And by the community, I mean the broader campus. Okay? And there are two ways you engage this. Part is sharing your research with it and having the discussions about that. But also part of it is bringing the community in to work with you on that research and with those projects that you're trying to do, so that it creates a culture on your campus of using institutional research, using data to make better decisions of how we move forward as a campus. And then finally, too often, and Michelle talked a little bit about this in her talk yesterday, IR is seen as we'll go ask them a question, but we don't want to involve them in the whole process, particularly when we're talking about student success or academic affairs or faculty affairs. That's not what they do. They just give us data. So if that's happening, it's very, very important that the IR office essentially raises its hand and says, no, 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 we need to be at that table. We need to be in the discussion, because things will come up that you're not thinking about that we can help provide answers for, and we can help shape where you're trying to go with it. And so I'm going to talk about this at both Purdue and UNLV. So how we set it up at Purdue, an environment that I'm actually very proud of now, and I feel like I left the university on a very good standing as I left. But then also how we're beginning to try and build that environment at UNLV. So when we talk about standards, and I said the first place for this is you've got to create an environment where common questions can get easily answered for your end users. And where we went with that at Purdue is our website we called purdue.edu/data digest. And this is our public-facing dashboard website. Anybody can go to this and look up any information about the university. All of this is public-facing. And what we have out here, as you can see from these topic areas, is a set of dashboards that talk about very common questions for the university. Our enrollment, our admissions, our retention and graduation, our research activity, what space allocation is like, how students migrate across the university, and also some comparisons to other Big Ten universities like Maryland that we keep up there. And so when a user goes out there, they can click on any of those tabs and pull up the dashboards that match to that set of topics, and then they can click into a dashboard to look at it. So specifically, this is the admissions one that was there. Applications, admissions, and matriculates to the university for a given year. It provides a nice, visual, easy to understand, easy accessible way for anyone at our university, and really anyone publicly, to find out what's happening in terms of our applications at the end of the cycle at Purdue. But it also creates a way for our end users to do some data exploration in a very controlled manner. So with all of the filters that we put, and we created a set of standards at the university in terms of how each of these dashboards needs to look and feel, where the filters are located so everybody knows when they go to anyone what they should look like, where we put our information, our hover for help about definitions around the tool and everything else. And it gives them the opportunity to then drill down and look at increasing levels within it. And we create security at this level. So here where it says department and major, data not available. The reason it says that is because not logged into the system, because I don't have a Purdue ID anymore. But anyone with a Purdue ID can log in there, and then they'll be able to drill down to the department and major level. And so if they want to, they can look in the College of Liberal Arts, in the Department of Psychology, how many African American males that were applied last year were admitted and were enrolled. So they can drill all the way down to that level and get the visual representation of what that looks like, which is great. But a number of people want to see more of the data themselves and be able to work with it. They don't want just the visual. They want tables and everything else, because that's what they work with all their lives. So we created a second set of, we call them data exploration tools. We call them data cutting tools that are built on SAS Web. Okay? So it's running SQL Server context through the SAS Web platform. And it sets up, again, a set of common filters where they can select information that they're interested in, and then it will pull back charts for them, tables of data for them. And they can drill through in progressive layers for it to get to where they want to get, and they can easily export that so they get the underlying tables. And then, from there, you're going to have people who are very data savvy, who are very high functional users for you, and they're going to want to be able to get at the underlying unit record. And they're going to want to be able to pull back their own data so that they can do some of their own exploration, so they can do research from it. And we have a set of power users that we're okay with them doing that. We set up security protocols and governance around who can get at it and how they do it. But at the same time, we don't want this environment to just be a complete free-for-all as well. Because this is where we get to the level where if you don't spend every day in this environment, you will pull the wrong answer to your question. For instance, at Purdue, in our data warehouse, so this is the portal to our data warehouse. We put Cognos on front of it, and it's where you access the data warehouse there. There's a field in the data warehouse called enrollment indicator. Every single person would naturally think, oh, I use that field to figure out what our enrollment is at the university. It has nothing to do with our enrollment at the university. There is a set of queries that are required to determine our enrollment. And if you don't live in the data every single day, you're not going to know that. So we have to set up a way where people can query the information they want and still get the same answer, but have this freedom to add and modify it and make it the way they want. So when they go to our portal here in Cognos, this is what they see when they come in. And you'll notice there's this folder down here called standard content. Okay? And so this is where we build our standards. When someone clicks into that, they then see the topic areas, very similar to like what I showed on the dashboards. And when they go into those topic areas, they will get reports and queries that line up with what we do on the dashboards. So they get the unit record information that matches exactly back to what we say on the dashboards. And so then if someone in the College of Technology, the Polytechnic Institute, wanted to pull back their data for their students because they're wanting to look at some kind of multiple relationship analysis between their student entry and their student retention rate, they can go get that unit record here, and they will pull back the exact population that matches up to their enrollment. So they're able to do that very easily. So then the next part of this, as I talked about, is then doing that research and making it accessible to campus. And the primary way we did this at Purdue was we set up monthly briefs about research topics at the university. So we'd write a quick research brief on all these things. Now some of these originated as much larger research studies and 30, 40-page white papers that we would provide to the president's office or the provost's office or campus at large. And we'd post those on our website, and no one would go look at them because they're just too much for the average user to pull in. So instead, we started doing these research briefs. And we made it common where we would publish one every single month. And then we would push it out to campus. So we have a daily newsletter at Purdue. It's called Purdue Today that tells all of our staff and our students about various things on campus. And we would publish our briefings into Purdue Today so people could go in and get it, or go out to the website and see it. And you can see, this is a little dated here, since it's just going back to September. But then they're all out there by the topic and the month that they were done on. And then when you click into it, you get to see the brief. And the key with this was briefs could be no longer than 2 pages. I couldn't get my president to read it unless it was 2 pages or less. So it was very important that we kept it very, very tight. And you'll see, it means we cram a lot of information and a lot of text into 2 pages and provide charts and visualizations with it as well. But it had to be done in those 2 pages. And we would select these topics. Some of these things were things that we in IR said, hey, here are things we ought to be looking at as a campus. And so we would select the topic and do it. This one, repeat courses, was one of those that we said, we need to look at this as a campus because this is an issue we had and we need to more broadly discuss it. And some of them were selected by our president, said, hey, I really need you guys to go look at, or by our provost office or some of our deans. And we would just set up a schedule of, here are the things we're going to work on each month. And then, after we publish this in the newsletter and put it up on our website, we would hold a forum every single month on campus about these. And anyone who wanted to come, ask more questions, learn more about the methodology we did, anything about it, we would do a short 20, 25-minute presentation, and then have 30 minutes to an hour of discussion with anyone who would want to come. And so this one, repeat courses, got really, really popular with our associate deans. They really wanted to have a conversation about this one. So we had a lot of our associate deans show up with that. So that's kind of the first step in engaging the community, is talking about that research and how it impacts what we're trying to do at the campus. And it matters a lot. But you've also, as I talked about, have to bring the community into the kind of work you're trying to do to get them engaged and committed to this idea of using data to make better decisions at the campus. And so here were some of the ways. There were a lot more than this, but here were some of the ways we did this at Purdue. So the first part of it, I showed that Cognos environment, our query environment, to our data warehouse. When we set up the governance structure for that, we didn't just do it ourselves. We didn't say, here it is, and this is the way it's going to look, and you're all going to like it, go out and use it. Instead, we brought a very large set of individuals from our campus community to build that with us. So when we talk about, here are the standards and the queries we want to put together, we asked the community, what do you want us to do first? Because it's time and it's effort, so where should we begin? And that built out what our queries are in there. And then we put a committee together from those people to say, to enforce everything out there has to be in the same template, it has to be named the same kind of way, it's got to have the same kind of accessibility functions within it. And so that committee of our end users enforces that. Obviously, we're on that, and we typically chair it and everything else. But it's based from our end users to put that together. Another way we did that, so those dashboards. The very first set of those dashboards we built ourselves. We put it together based upon our old fact book that we used to publish at the university. And we wanted to replicate that and do it in a way that was more accessible and everything. And so that's where that first set came from. But then, every dashboard after that was a discussion with our end user community again. What is it you want to see? What do you want us to build? What's more important? And this became particularly important for a set of dashboards we call management dashboards, which are only accessible behind login at Purdue. And it's for our department heads for the information they need to run their departments. And so we went to them and said, what are the kinds of things you really need to know? And the first thing overwhelmingly they said was, we know nothing about our HR and our finance. I can't see my budget sheet. I don't know what my hiring practices have been like. I don't know how many searches I have open right now. I need help with that. And so that was actually where we began. We thought we were going to be doing more student things in here, and our department heads said, oh no, this is a thing we've never been able to see. You need to start with this. And so that's what we did first in that space. And then after we had that conversation, they got much more interested in talking about broader student success topics. So we have like retention and graduation out there on the public site that I talked about, and we have student migration. But we had a number of department heads who said, look, what I really need to know, because our students move around so much at Purdue, they'll shift majors multiple times. It's 40% of the students who graduate from Purdue will graduate from a different major than what they started with at the university. And so our department head said, when I talk about student success and I want to know what's going on, I don't want to just know that first-time, full-time cohort. I need to know my students who are here right now, where did they come from? What did they look like? What are the most likely paths they're going to go forward on? Based on the point in time they look at right now, well, how much would you predict that those students are going to actually graduate from the university? And so it was a much more complex dashboard, and that was the second set of things that we started working with that community to make it look the way they want. And the last part of this is we have a fairly distributed environment at Purdue. So there is the central IR office, which I ran. Then there is a very large enrollment management group, which is a large data group that we work very closely with. And then each of our colleges actually had we call them data managers primarily, but they were like one-person IR shops in each of our colleges. That's because some of our colleges are enormous. So the College of Engineering at Purdue by itself is 16,000 students all by itself. So it's bigger than a lot of universities in the United States. So, and those deans would have very specific questions about that they need to know right now about their colleges and departments. And so they would have this data manager in their group that could go through our standard content and get to those kind of questions that they wanted. And so we need to work very closely with those people to make sure we were building an environment that was optimal for them. And so we created this group of individuals called academic liaisons, which was the data managers, and we wanted to make sure that they had a very specific engagement with us. And so the way we would do that is we gave them money for professional development. We gave them a grant of $4,000 a year so that they could use for travel or training or anything else, because those people often did not get professional development money from their colleges. So this was a great way for them to be able to get that and also get more advanced in their discipline, which only helped us. It made it easier to have a conversation with them. I'll be completely honest, it also made it easier where sometimes we would hire them away from the colleges into our departments. So it was great as a development opportunity for us as well. And so we started that program at the university as well. So the last part of this is raising your hand. So this is the website for a thing called the University Innovation Alliance. Okay? This is a group of 11 universities in the United States who are all very high research activity universities. So their Carnegie classification is the highest level of research within it. There are also institutions that most of them enroll a reasonable amount of Pell-eligible and first-generation students. Not the most, but for very high research activities, they do a lot of them. And we have one of the UCs in here because the UCs certainly do enroll a number of those. And it was a group that kind of got together and said, we should discuss how we promote student success and retention and graduation, particularly among first-generation and low-income students. And so they built this coalition and said, we're going to have those discussions routinely. And one of the things that matters in there is what we're doing around analytics for that. And when we found out in IR we were having this discussion, we immediately went to the provost's office and said, if you're going to do this, we need to be on Purdue's team. We've got to be one of the representatives in the room when you have these conversations. And so it's been great. It's allowed us to have a lot of conversations with other universities about what they're trying to do around analytics. It's allowed us to be at the table at Purdue when we discuss initiatives we wanted to push at Purdue. And we were able to talk about what was available data-wise and how we could advance those discussions. And it was because we actively went forward and said, we need to be there. So it was very important we got in the discussion. And then the other thing when I want to talk about raising your hand is, sometimes it means you just push an initiative yourself. This is a thing that's been mentioned a few times, like what we've done with the Wi-Fi signals for students and everything. And this is what this is about. This is a partnership that we did with our teaching and learning technology group. Okay? So in institutional research, we built a big data platform sitting on a Hadoop server running Dell's big data suite. And in it, we pull in all of our student data, we pull in our HR and finance data, we pull in all of our learning management data, so the click stream from there, how often are the students clicking into the learning management system, what are they looking at in there, how long are they staying on those things, are they participating in discussion boards, things of that nature. And then we also pull in all of their wireless network activity traffic. Specifically, what we're pulling in is every time that their mobile device connects to one of our wireless access points on campus. So we know when and where they're hitting our campus. We also know, we can know, and we haven't really done anything with it other than monitoring where our biggest chunks of traffic are coming from, but we could also know what they're going out and looking with it, okay? And that became important because it became a discussion in our classrooms where we were getting a huge load of wireless traffic in our classrooms, more than we expected based upon our educational offerings in the classroom. So we looked at what were the main things that are hitting our load in our large lecture classrooms. Overwhelmingly, it was streaming video services. Netflix popped up to the top of that. YouTube was very high in it. A number of streaming video services because students were just sitting in class watching live videos while lectures were occurring. And so it became a discussion on campus of, should we do something to block those in certain classrooms? And we haven't really decided that yet. But that's where we got into what the actual content was. But why we did that, why it matters, is we would then use that to look at things in terms of like George Koo's theory of student engagement and Vincent Tino's theory of college student withdrawal, with the idea that students need to be academically and socially integrated to your campus to be committed and successful. And we would look for behavioral markers of that. What are things that they're doing that appear to show that they're more engaged? So like one of those, very much so, is how long it takes them to register for class. So when we open registration each year, students have a certain day they're supposed to go in and register, and not everybody does. Either because of motivation, or because they're not as engaged with the campus, or they just think, oh, I'll get to the classes I need later. And there's a very strong relationship between how long it takes you to register for a class and how successful you're going to be in that class. The longer you wait, the less likely you're going to be successful on the campus. For a whole host of reasons. There's nothing causal in this. This is all a relationship. But what we did was build this web tool that shows students, hey, this is what the relationship is there. You should be worried about this. And then we would provide resources about, hey, what should you do right now? When the student logs in, they see this is your registration period you should be in. And then it has resources for here's how you can prepare for that registration. Here's how you go out to your 4-year academic plan and build it before you go and talk to your advisors. And we've got a whole host of things like this. So with the Wi-Fi stuff, we looked at how much time students are spending on campus when they're not in class. And there's a significant, as you would expect, a significant relationship between that and their GPA at the university. And so we would show students, here's the relationship. So we have a chart that looked like this. And then when they logged in, we would show them on a calendar. And by the way, here's how much time you spent on campus last week and where you were. And our students asked for that. I want to be very clear about that. Because there is a, we have a colleague, McCabe at Michigan, who talks about when he does this kind of work around learning analytics, he calls it going to the precipice of creepy. And we were skating right along the edge of creepy, okay? So we asked the students, what is it you want to see in this? And we can do this. And their answer was overwhelmingly, oh, no, I want you to show me exactly where I was. And by the way, can you put my course schedule on top of that? And can you put the resources and when they're open at Purdue on top of that? So I can see, was I near any of those? And then I didn't go to them when I really should have. They asked us for this. And so we pulled more of it in. We also pulled direct course stuff in this. So things like, so talked about that surfing in class problem. We show them in your typical classroom where internet usage matters. So where it's really related to whether you get a good grade in the class or not. Grade distribution by internet usage. We show them how much they're using the internet during the class. And we show them in relation to everybody else in the class. So they can see, here's how much I'm using it, and I am using it way more than anybody else. And by the way, students who use it that much in class, it means they are highly likely streaming those services, and they are much more likely to get a D or F in the class. So we would nudge the students towards, stop doing this. Look, you are way out of bounds compared to everybody else. We'd also do attendance the same way, using the Wi-Fi. So attendance matters in every class. It's important you go to every class. But there are some classes where it matters a whole lot more. And so for those courses where it had a moderate or strong effect size, we would do the same thing for the students. We would show them, here's the relationship between attendance and course outcomes, between your grade and the course. And by the way, here's how many times you've missed based upon whether your phone was in class or not. Here's how many times you've missed, and here's how it compares to everybody else in your class. So they would be able to see, are they out of bounds, are they doing okay? And it's to try and help them modify their behavior around those routes. We call this academic forecast. If you want to see the public face of it, you're not going to be able to see as much of the data because you have to be a Purdue student, obviously, to see your data. But the public portion of it, you can see if you just go out to purdue.edu/academic forecast. Or actually, just /forecast, it'll pull it up. So that's Purdue, and we did a lot at Purdue, and it was great. And so you say, well, why the heck did you leave Purdue? Because you were doing really cool things. And we were, and it was really cool, and it was great to do those kind of things. But when UNLV approached me, I got into IR, and I got into higher education because I believe in the mission of what higher education can accomplish, particularly in terms of what it means of helping those people raise their standard of living in their life and what it means not just to them, but to their families and generations after them when they can get a degree, and what it means in terms of their earnings and just what we see in terms of personal happiness later in life and engagement with their careers. I believe this is what higher education is for. And Purdue is a great institution. It's an amazing institution. But it's a selective institution, which means it caters mainly to people who have a higher socioeconomic status, are more likely to be academically prepared when they come to the university, and thus have much higher retention and graduation rates than UNLV. Okay? It also is an overwhelmingly white campus. Most people there look a lot like me. Okay? And that's great. We need to educate those people, and it matters a lot. It matters in terms of economic development for the country. It matters for those people. But at UNLV, we're a majority-minority campus, which means that Caucasians are in the minority there. African Americans at Hispanics at 24% are our second largest population at the university. You combine Hispanics, blacks, Asian, 2 or more races, and that's the majority of our students on campus. Okay? So it's a much more diverse campus. And with those populations, they're populations that typically have struggled more in higher education in the United States, with the exception of Asian students, which tend to actually be more successful in the United States. But Hispanic, black, 2 or more races often struggle more in the United States. So we're dealing with more of those students. We have many more low-income students. So students who receive a Pell Grant are typically the lowest socioeconomic status students in the United States. And you can see it's 41% of our population in UNLV. 56% of our population are first-generation students, so no one in their family has ever gone to college. They don't know what it's like to go to college. And with that, we've got a lot of opportunity to get better. And so what we do in IR can help make us better. So our first-year retention rate is only 74% there. We lose 25 to 26% of our students after 1 year. They just disappear. A bunch of them go to other colleges. They transfer around a lot. We have a high transfer rate. But we also know our 8-year cohort, 36% of the students in our 8-year cohort just leave higher education altogether. They never finish anywhere. They just disappear. And towards that end, our 6-year graduation rate, it's only 41%. It's lower than Maryland's 4-year rate, way lower. And I talked yesterday, our 4-year rate is 17%. It's abysmal. So we've got a lot of room we can make up, and the things we can do in IR can monumentally impact this and help us move forward on that. So how do we do those kind of things? Same things. We got to set up our standards. And we have a backbone at UNLV. It's not bad. It's good that we're starting. We have a place to start from. We've got a wiki-based data dictionary that's out there for anybody to use. And it's a very good start. It needs to be expanded. It kind of died out for a little bit there. We need to get it going again, which is really good. We have a set of standard reports on our website that we're trying to make these a little more interactive and visually appealing to help with people. But it can go out there and get at those common questions and get the common answers, and you can filter by certain years, and you can filter down to departments in some of them, and so it allows you to be able to answer those questions. So there's something there. We need to build more of those. We also have a set of dashboards, which are right now all behind security. You've got to be able to go in and look at the dashboards after logging in. But we have them there. Retention is a big one we have out there. Admissions is a big one. We have an enrollment one out there. We need to build many, many, many more of these because we don't have enough at the campus. And we have too many people saying, I don't know where to get an answer. And for some reason, they don't want to go to our website. They're happy to go here, but they don't want to go to our website. I don't know why. I'm guessing a lot of it is because of the visually appealing element that happens with the dashboard and the fact that they can do a little more exploration there. So we need to expand this a lot at UNLV. We're doing that. The worst thing we have that we really need to work on there is, so I talked about our query environment, Cognos at Purdue, and the fact that we don't let you just go out and do whatever you want in that environment. We have standards that say if you want to get to enrollment, here's how you get there. We have a query environment at UNLV as well. It's built in Oracle's BI tool, the OBIE, which is what this is, an interface, and we do training, and anyone who wants to have access to it, we'll set them up to be able to do it. But there are no standards in that environment. If you want to go out and query, you just go out. We say, have fun, okay? That, when I got there, was the thing that scared me the most. And it also scared me because standards help our own department answer questions the same. And because we didn't have a set of standard queries like, so I showed that retention dashboard. And so I got there, and one of the first things they asked me to look at was what's going on with our retention rate. And so I said to my office, how do we build this dashboard? How do we define the cohort? Where do we do our retention for it? And I got 3 answers from all 3 of my analysts. And it made me very twitchy. It got me very, very nervous. And it's because they haven't had that standard content out there. And so each person is doing just a little bit of their own difference in it. And since it was just a little bit, right now they're still all getting the same answer. But I don't know when we get to the point where that one little tweak no longer gives you the same answer. And that's a big problem. So this is one of the things I'm trying to push the office to work on very quickly, for creating more of those standards in this query environment for our end users. Because our end users really want to use this and overwhelmingly say to us, it's so confusing out there. I have no idea how to get to your official number. And after 3 months there, I say, I don't know either, because we don't have standards. We're going to get there, I promise. So yeah, it's a big thing we need to work on there. We've already started to do more research there. Like I said, 2 days after getting on campus, they immediately said to me, we need to start looking at our first-year retention rate because it isn't growing. We actually took a step back last year. What's going on with it? And there's some easy things we can do that we just hadn't thought about as a university. So like one of the first things we looked at were, what are some of the primary risk factors for our students coming in, and what does our class look like with that? And so we're talking about things like, do they have a low high school GPA? Do they have a low threshold on their standardized tests? Are they first generation? Are they Pell? Drawing a blank on some of my other things here. but there's a number of factors like that, that predicted risk coming in. And then also, one of the biggest things is, a quarter of our class earns below a 2.25 after their first semester. 25% of them do. Of those students who earn below a 2.25 after their first semester, only 30% of them even come back to campus the next year. And it's something like only 10% of them ever graduate. And so, I mean, it's just it's a super obvious and easy thing that it was like, hey, here's a population we need to be doing something with. And also we looked at, so those risk factors I talked about, we looked at those and said, well, and there's almost a stair-step function in terms of the more risk factors you have, the lower your likelihood of being retained. And you really kind of fall off the cliff after you get to 3 or more of those. So we said, so how many of our students come into the university with 3 or more of those risk factors? It's 25% of our cohort comes in with 3 or more of those risk factors. And we said, what are we doing for those students? And the answer is, so it's things like that we're able to take an initial first step on. I'll talk about how we're engaging campus around that pretty quickly here in a second. With that, faculty had a lot of questions around retention, around graduation, around enrollment that the office traditionally didn't talk to them about. And so they said, we really want to know what's going on. So I've done a couple of presentations to the Faculty Senate. This is just having that information for them and making it accessible. And then, and this is really more engagement, but we have a midterm grade policy at the university that the Senate is uninspired by, might be the best way to put it. So we ask that every single course, at least in our core curriculum, provide a midterm grade for students. So they have an idea of what their progress is like in their class. And there are a lot of our faculty that say, I'm not sure I like it. I don't think it really does anything for us. And we've got some initial research that says, it really matters if we can tell our students how they're doing, because midterm grade is highly, highly related to their final grade. And so if we could start helping those students who show a problem early on, it'd be good. Senate heard that and said, okay, great, I'm glad to hear that, but we want to do our own study on it. And instead of being resistant to that, my answer was, great, we'd love to work with you to do that study. And so we've got a set of faculty that we've provided a whole host of data to, and we're talking through with them the methodology and everything, so that the Senate will be able to have their own study that says, hey, midterm grades are highly related to final grades, and we should do something about it. And hopefully it helps us move on with that policy. Also, in terms of engaging the community. So I said we need to build a lot more dashboards. When I stepped into the office, they were in the middle of just about to launch this incredibly comprehensive dashboard for the colleges that has basically everything they would want to know about their student life cycle. Admissions, retention, graduation, degrees, enroll, all of it in one dashboard. It is an incredibly data-intensive set of dashboards. And it's great, and I'm glad we're just about ready to roll it out, but they had never talked to the community about what is it you want to see in this, and we're about to launch it when I came into the institution. I said, well, that's great. Let's go do some roadshows on this and talk to our end users about it and see what they want to see in it. And as you might expect, the feedback was overwhelming. And it slowed us down. We haven't published this yet because there were a lot of things that our end user community said, I want you to tweak it. And so we've been working through those. And so it's about having that conversation. We've also, so in our environment right now at UNLV, HR and finance data are not in our warehouse environment. It's all pulled out in manual extracts that then sit in the IR office and nobody but us can touch it. This is where Purdue was at about 5 years ago. So we've implemented Workday, which is our new ERP for finance and HR, and I'm sitting on the implementation committee. Admittedly, very far at the end of the cycle because we actually launched it on September 1, so I've only been at the university for a month. But being able to talk to them and talk to IT about how do we build the data warehouse environment for this so it can all be in the same place and be able to get to those common answers, and we can put dashboards on top of that as well. So it's good we're in that discussion. Towards that end, how we do faculty workload there, where we got to combine HR data with student data to be able to do that. All run through the IR office. Nobody can touch it but us, and we go, trust us. This is the answer, believe us. And so now talking to our community about, oh, we got to change that. We're not the official system of record for this. It's got to be in Workday, and it's got to be in PeopleSoft. And so how do we do that and make it into a tool that you can access and be able to answer with it? And we've got some standard issues we need to work with there. But again, I don't want that all to just come out of our office. So we have a data oversight committee that is made up of me, our CIO at the institution, our CFO at the institution, our head of, well, it looks like it's actually going to be our vice president for research that is sitting on it, as well as a representative of the president's office, so that we can talk about how do we need to make this look at the campus, and what are the kinds of things we really can move forward with, and what's our roadmap for what we should work on first. And we're engaging the broader community on that roadmap. So that's all good, we're doing those things. But then in terms of raising our hands, so I said I'd get back to this. So I talked about when we did that retention stuff very, very early. We did it, and I said, well, there's some really low-hanging fruit here we can work with. And I talked to the provost about it, and I talked to our vice provost for undergraduate education, and said we should work on these things. And that was great. And they're like, okay, we'll work on these things. And I said, no, you don't understand. We should work on these things. And so I talked to the provost and said, we've got to talk to the deans about these. So a week before I came out here, I did a presentation to the deans on all of that research around retention to say, hey, here are things that are going on. Have you thought about these in the academic community? And how can we move forward with them? We've also worked very closely with the vice provost for undergraduate education. So we said, for instance, we got a quarter of our class coming in with 3 or more risk factors. Maybe we should set up a program to specifically work with those students more closely. So we provided information to the advising community through the vice provost for undergraduate education about who are those students. And we're monitoring how much contact we're having with them. And so we've been very involved, not just in the research with it, but the implementation of the programs that come with it. And we're working now with the vice provost for undergraduate education to talk about what are we going to do about that 25% of our students who get below a 2.25 after their first semester. Because you want to raise our retention rate and our graduation rate, if we could save half of those kids, we would make monumental changes in the success of our students. So it isn't just about doing that research and providing the data. We're in the implementation discussion of what the program should look like with them. Okay? Also, our enrollment services area. So I talked about at Purdue, they had a pretty large data group that did a lot of work for our enrollment services area. And my background was I came from that area. I used to be the director of that area before I became the chief data officer. They don't have that at UNLV. They've got 3 people who are doing their data and the data services for enrollment services. And those people are very, very, very focused on, there are operational changes we need to make to PeopleSoft for us to function, and that is most of what their job is. So, I haven't done enrollment projections in 5 years at the university. They just kind of wing it, okay? So instead of saying, well, that's enrollment services problem, we stepped in and said, okay, we'll do projections for you. So we ran our first set of enrollment projections that I provided to them. Also, our financial aid policies at the university. Again, we're very, very need-based because we have a lot of low-income students who come in. But we have never, ever strategically looked at how we're using financial aid to try and leverage the type of students we bring in and also helping the students be more successful, who we should be targeting more of our aid at in their second and third year where it's really needed. They just let it out. The most needy got it the first until we ran out of money. So we're now trying to do financial aid analysis, from which, oh my God, that's going to take us forever, because it's just, they've never really looked at the data, so it's just a jumbled pile right now. But we're trying to help them with that, because they were never going to be able to get there by themselves. So IR is very much, in my view, a service organization. It functions for the purpose to make our universities better. And so what that means is, where do we need to get better? And at UNLV, these are major things we need to get better at. So we step in and do that right away. So, key takeaways from this. The access and the amount of data that we're dealing with in institutions and in IR is growing exponentially. And it's going to continue to grow. As parallel processing infrastructure gets cheaper, this is expensive right now, but it will get cheaper like it always does. And when that happens, it's going to overtake Oracle. Oracle will die. It will no longer be the system of choice for all of our warehouse environment. It will be these parallel processing environments. And the amount of data you can work with in those is so much greater than anything we've ever used. We never would have been able to do the Wi-Fi stuff in the Oracle tables at Purdue. It would be ridiculous. The whole system would crash. Running that on a Hadoop server allows us to be able to do those kind of things. And because we can do that there, who's to say that we don't eventually have standard reports for that Wi-Fi access to the campus at the university? So building that kind of infrastructure. There are a lot of new tools and techniques that make it possible to access more of that information. And what does that mean? All our customers are going to ask for it. Okay? If it's out there, they're going to want it, and they're going to want to be able to touch it and be able to use it. So sticking to those principles I talked about matters, even as that environment changes, as the access gets greater, as the amount of data gets greater, as the privacy discussions, because of the type of data we're touching, get stickier. Okay? Those principles still hold. Got to have standards to make it work. You've got to do the research that's focused around improving the institutional goals, and you got to share that. You really got to share it and talk about it routinely with the community. You got to get the community involved in what you're doing. So you're moving as a university in the same direction, and you're talking about the things that the university feels matter the most. And then IR's got to step up. It's got to volunteer to be involved. And those things that maybe have sometimes been a little outside of their wheelhouse to help move the university forward. So, that's my presentation. Thank you all very much. Time for questions.
Thank you very, very much. 这个很有意思，两个不同的学校哈，所以这个很好的经验。来，这个发问，English or Chinese is all okay. We go okay. 来 first.
Thank you, Brent. It's a wonderful talk, and we just mentioned it's a very interesting comparison between Purdue and the new university you are providing the service. My question is very classical, and also I think my colleagues they also want to know how to make a decision to choose the peer institution for you to compare. Because in today we all know that we have an interesting project that ask everyone to make a proposal yesterday, right? And
everyone got it done, right?
Yeah. So maybe today to know this secret, but yeah, I know according to the requirement, each institution they have to pick one institution as their benchmark institution, and I heard some interesting choice. For example, some middle university they try to pick a very high level, and some. Yeah, but I think you may have some wisdom to pick a good peer institution that can really help your institution to get the improvement.
Yeah, so it really gets at well, what are you wanting to accomplish with that? So, and there are, excuse me, grab a drink of water. As Michelle talked about, there are those institutions that I would call your true peers. And we have a benefit in the United States with the iPad's data system that we can actually look at. But what institutions really kind of look like us that we should be monitoring to see how they're doing? And that was the thing that UNLV had never done in the past. Because at Purdue, it was easy because we had the Big Ten. And almost everybody in the Big Ten looks alike, with the exception of Northwestern as a private and Michigan, which operates like a private. But Michigan is the aspirational peer for almost everybody in the Big Ten. But it was really easy because we all had these sister institutions that were in athletic conference together. We all talked together all the time. It's good. UNLV doesn't have that. And so they were picking institutions kind of by name recognition. And so I went out and said, no, let's look at data on what institutions actually look like us based upon their enrollment, their diversity, the research dollars they generate, how much funding they get from the state per an FTE. So they're a very similar type of institution. And said, here are the people that really look like us, and we should be measuring ourselves against to see if we're doing as well or better than them. And there were some institutions in there that our provost was like, who? I mean, it's like North Texas, which is a fine institution, but doesn't have a lot of name recognition in American higher education. And I said, they look exactly like UNLV. They are our sister institution. We should be thinking about them. So that's how we can talk about our peers. But then it also gets into that idea of aspirational. So there are also institutions out there that they kind of look like us. Their enrollment's kind of similar, or maybe it's bigger because they've been growing. Their diversity is like us. They serve a lot of low-income students like us, but they have way more research dollars, and they have way better retention and graduation rates. And like University of Central Florida, Georgia State, San Diego State a little bit. And so those are the ones that I don't know that we want to benchmark against these, but these are the people we need to go talk to say, what have you done to move the needle, to move ahead? Because 10 years ago, you looked a lot like us, and now you're doing much better. So what have you done to be successful? And so it's really kind of, what is that question you want to ask? Is it, what are the people who look like us, how are they doing, and how do we compare to them? Or is it, here's an institution we really want to be, and we need to go talk to them about how they got there. And so it gets at this idea of both your peers and your aspirational peers.
Thank you, Brent. You do give a lot of us inspiration and how we're going to build up. I'm an IT person in our National Central University in our office. The most interesting part the most interesting part that toward my direction is how do you get enough of IT power to do all those things you need to do? Because frankly speaking, I think most of the colleges and universities we just don't have enough IT person or IT capability to build all the things. You talk about how to bring all those things to the community, the things. But at the back hand, you need to react to all these requests. Yeah. You need to have a big enough team to do all the things. And at the beginning stage, you need to build new standards, meaning you need a lot of design and development team. But through the first stage, most of the work is transferred into the maintenance, how to maintain to this level. And those are kind of different tasks. And if you set up a much bigger team for the development, but you're not going to maintain that in the future. So what's the healthy scale in terms of how you do?
So in terms of the healthy scale, I'm not sure I can entirely answer that. But what I'll say towards that end is, yes, particularly, it's true for IR too, but particularly for IT, they oftentimes feel overwhelmed by the amount of things that are being thrown at them that are just about keeping things up and running, keeping the trains running, making sure the lights are on, making sure our Wi-Fi system works. And so I reported to our CIO at Purdue, and I became very aware of what a thankless job IT can be. You only get acknowledged when something breaks. No one ever says to you, good job. They only say, oh, this thing's not working. And I get that. That can feel very, very overwhelming. But part of developing those standards is when you have more of those standards, the maintenance becomes a little bit easier. And you have to, so you've got to invest the efforts to say, here's what our standard environment will work with. And everybody can't have their own little individual thing. We have a standard environment because it allows us to make the maintenance more manageable. And by having it, it means that our developers don't have to spend their entire lives doing maintenance. We can let them think about what is the next step we need to take. So, and Purdue was like this for a while. It didn't think about those standards enough in its data environment. It just ran off and did what anybody wanted. Anyone who showed up and said, oh, I want this new system, they went, yeah, okay, we're a service organization, we'll do that for you. And that was a problem. Two things that helped in that space. One, where we restructured and that IR became much more connected to our data IT team. But also, when I first came into Purdue, I didn't lead our data team. It was under an individual, Doug Foster, who has since gone on to become the CIO at the University of South Carolina. Doug was great, and he was brilliant about getting that team to think about better setting up those standards so that we had a manageable environment. Doug loved to say to his people, look, good customer service is not when someone comes to you and says, I'm ready to kill myself, handing them a gun. It is saying, no, there are better ways. And so he got them to really think about, you've got to have a set of standards in that environment so that you can more easily maintain it, so we can still devote, and it's typically at Purdue about 35% of our effort to new development as we go.
As you know, I'm from the QA office, so nowadays many universities, I think it's not in addition to prepare for the ministry of education, it's a big project, but on the other hand, many universities, I think here probably you're preparing for the next year's institutional accreditations that I presented to you when you visited the HEAC. So I really want to know probably when you advise all the university representatives here, and how that the IR office work with the QA office. Probably in the US, these two offices in a certain way is a kind of integration. But in Taiwan now it's separated. Not just many universities actually, they combine both too. So in any way then how are you going to support the QA system, and then how they're going to work with probably it's a QA office, or probably do you suggest that in the long run these two offices, I mean, it could be in certain way, okay, collaborated or integrated together?
So I think it works in both fashions. At Purdue, our chief accreditation officer reported to me. At UNLV, she doesn't. She reports to another vice provost, but we work incredibly closely with her. We talked about this a little bit when we visited you on, it's been a long week, Thursday, yes. When we visited you on Thursday. But I think where the conversation really needs to go with QA and compliance and everything of that nature is, it gets at that idea of collaboration that I talked about with the university. It's got to occur between our accreditation agencies and the universities as well. So right now in the United States, way too much of accreditation is viewed as a necessary evil. It's a thing we've got to do because it's important, but we don't talk about, well, what's the benefit we can get out of that, and how can we create a service that then gives benefit back to the institution. And too much of those things that are happening in the United States are things that our private companies are doing. So we talked about the National Clearinghouse, that federal government easily could have been that service for us in the United States and didn't want to. It was more interested in just, well, make sure you get your stuff in. And so Clearinghouse came in and said, get your stuff to us, but if you do that, we'll handle this for you and take this burden off of you. And by doing that, Clearinghouse has got the best nationwide data set of students in the United States now. And so I think to really make it work, that conversation needs to occur between the accrediting agencies and the institutions to say, well, it isn't just about giving you this because it has to be done. How do we use that to benefit the whole ecosystem and for each of those campuses? I think that's where it really needs to go. And I'll be quite frank, we're not doing it very well in the United States, I don't think.
好，那个时间的缘故哈，那我们就在这边告一段落了啊。然后那个礼拜一的时候，那个 Draker 跟那个 Michelle 哈，他们会到新竹哦，就是清华跟那个玄奘嘛，会招待他们。那也欢迎在座的哈，如果礼拜一有空，想要再更详细的讨论哦，就到新竹来哦。那可以跟那个对，跟我们这两学校的那个 IR office 联络一下，或者等一下去外面登记一下，好不好？好，那个我们就是你知道那个普渡它的那个 computer center 600个人，哦，那我们台湾的话呢，那个交大的运作模式，大数据中心的运作模式跟他们有一点像，哦，那不过我们这个可以再进一步的交流，那我们热烈的我们就谢谢 Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if there are other questions, I'll be around. Please come speak. Thanks.
Yes, you'll be around.
谢谢秘书长，谢谢 Dr. Dre。接下来我们要邀请秘书长来帮我们致赠礼品，然后并合影留念。谢谢 Dr. Dre 精彩的分享啊！接下来是我们的休息时间。那因为我们的时间有一点点小小的 delay 啊，那我们现在的休息时间大约为10分钟。那邀请各位贵宾10点30分的时候呢，回到我们的会场，接续我们下一个议程。谢谢。